Arizona Territory, 1878. The sun beat down mercilessly on the parched landscape, turning the distant mountains into wavering mirages. For 24-year-old Finn Yates, the open range was the only companion a man needed. Loyal, demanding, and uncomplicated. Unlike people, the frontier never disappointed. He'd learned early that attachments were dangerous in a land where death arrived without warning, carried by bullet, disease, or the unforgiving elements. "A man's only got himself out here," he muttered to his horse, a sturdy buckskin gelding that responded with a flick of its ears. "Anything else is just asking for heartbreak." Finn adjusted his Stetson, grimacing as sweat trickled down his tanned face. 3 years riding for the Diamond T had hardened him into someone barely recognizable from the hopeful young man who'd headed west from Pennsylvania. His lean, muscular frame moved with practiced efficiency as he rounded up strays, his blue eyes constantly scanning the horizon for trouble. The other hands called him handsome, but the women in Copper Creek rarely got close enough to form an opinion. Finn made sure of that. The cattle drive was nearly complete, just another day's push to get the herd to the railhead at Garrison Springs. After that, Finn planned to collect his pay and head deeper into the territory, away from the encroaching settlements. Civilization meant people, and people meant complications. "Keep moving," he called to a stubborn longhorn, expertly maneuvering his horse to guide it back toward the herd. The work suited him, solitary, demanding, and with only the barest necessities of human interaction. That night at the campfire, as the other cowboys shared stories and laughter, Finn sat apart, cleaning his revolver with methodical precision. Chuck, the grizzled trail boss, approached with a steaming cup of coffee. "You're mighty quiet these days, Yates." Finn accepted the coffee with a nod. "Just doing my job. Reckon there's more to life than just work," Chuck said, settling his aging frame on a nearby log. "Man needs something to look forward to besides the next paycheck." "Not me," Finn replied, his voice betraying no emotion. "Everything I need fits in my saddlebags." Chuck studied him thoughtfully. "That's what I used to say. Then I met my Martha. 20 years now, and every day I wake up wondering how I got so lucky." Finn didn't respond. He'd heard similar sentiments before, usually from men who hadn't witnessed what he had. His own father wasting away after his mother's death, leaving 10-year-old Finn to fend for himself. Love wasn't strength, it was vulnerability. And vulnerability got you killed on the frontier. "Garrison Springs has changed since you were last through," Chuck continued. "Got themselves a proper doctor now. Young lady from back east. Causing quite a stir." "Lady doctor?" Finn couldn't hide his skepticism. "Folks around here will let anyone hang a shingle these days." Chuck chuckled. "Don't let her hear you say that. Sharp as a tack and twice as stubborn, from what I hear." Finn reassembled his revolver with practiced hands. "Won't be staying long enough to find out." The following morning dawned clear and hot. Finn rode point, guiding the herd across the final stretch of open range toward Garrison Springs. The cattle moved sluggishly in the heat, requiring constant attention to prevent stragglers. As they crested a ridge overlooking a narrow arroyo, Finn spotted movement in the brush below. "Hold up," he called to the nearest riders, raising his hand. Experience had taught him to be cautious. The territory still saw its share of rustlers and Apache raids. Before anyone could respond, a rattlesnake spooked from under a rock, sending Finn's horse rearing in panic. The sudden movement caught him off guard. He felt himself slipping, then falling through empty air. His last conscious thought was of the ground rushing up to meet him. Pain greeted Finn's return to consciousness, sharp, insistent pain radiating from his leg and ribs. Disoriented, he tried to sit up, but found himself gently pushed back onto what felt like a proper bed. "Please stay still. You've taken quite a fall." The voice was female, cultured, and unfamiliar. Finn blinked against the sunlight streaming through nearby windows, focusing gradually on the figure standing beside him. She was young, perhaps 22, with honey blonde hair pulled back in a practical bun. Her blue calico dress was simple but well-made, partially covered by a white apron. What struck Finn most were her eyes, intelligent and direct, the color of warm amber. "Where am I?" he managed, his throat dry. "My clinic in Garrison Springs." She offered him water, supporting his head as he drank. "I'm Dr. Tessa Blackwell. And you, according to your friends, are Finn Yates." Finn frowned, memories returning. The cattle drive. The snake. The fall, the herd, is safely delivered to the railhead, she assured him. Your trail boss brought you here yesterday. You've been unconscious for nearly 24 hours. 24 hours? Finn struggled to sit up again, grimacing as pain lanced through his side. Broken leg, 2 cracked ribs, and a concussion, Dr. Blackwell said matter-of-factly. You're not going anywhere for at least 6 weeks. 6 weeks. The words hit harder than the fall. That's impossible. What you need, Mr. Yates, is to heal. Her tone brooked no argument. Unless you prefer to spend the rest of your life with a permanent limp? Finn fell silent, trapped by both his injuries and the determined gaze of the woman treating them. 6 weeks in one place. 6 weeks of dependence. The thought made him more uncomfortable than the pain. Your boss paid for 2 weeks' care, she continued, checking his bandages with practiced hands. After that, we'll need to make other arrangements. I can pay my way, Finn said stiffly. Dr. Blackwell nodded, her expression softening slightly. I don't doubt it. But money isn't everything, Mr. Yates. You'll need help with daily tasks, rehabilitation exercises. She paused. And perhaps a measure of patience that I suspect doesn't come naturally to you. For the first time, Finn noticed the shadows under her eyes, the slight strain in her posture. She was tired, likely had been working through the night to care for him. Thank you, he said grudgingly, for helping me. Something like surprise flickered across her face before she nodded. Rest now. We'll talk more later. As she turned to leave, Finn caught a glimpse of himself in a small mirror on the opposite wall. Unshaven, bruised, and utterly helpless. This was exactly the kind of vulnerability he'd spent years avoiding. The next morning, Finn woke to sunlight and the sounds of Garrison Springs coming to life outside. Wagon wheels on dirt streets, distant hammering, voices calling greetings. Dr. Blackwell entered carrying a tray with breakfast and fresh bandages. You slept well, she observed. That's encouraging. Finn shifted uncomfortably. What's the damage, really? And don't soften it. I need to know. Tessa set down the tray and pulled a chair beside his bed. Your leg was a clean break. I've said it properly, but it needs time to heal. Your ribs will mend on their own if you don't exert yourself. The concussion is my primary concern right now. You've done this before, Finn said, studying her. She couldn't be much older than 25, yet she moved with the confidence of someone much more experienced. I trained at the Women's Medical College of Pennsylvania, she replied. And I spent 2 years in an army hospital during the Apache campaigns. This isn't my first cowboy with more courage than sense. Despite himself, Finn felt a smile tug at his lips. Most folks around here wouldn't trust a female doctor. Most folks around here didn't have many options before I arrived. She helped him sit up against the pillows. Now eat your breakfast. You need strength to heal. Over the following days, Finn learned more about the young doctor who'd saved him. Tessa Blackwell had come west after losing her father, also a physician, to influenza. With no family remaining in Philadelphia, she'd answered an advertisement from Garrison Springs, a growing town desperate for medical care. For 2 years, she'd fought skepticism and prejudice to build her practice, eventually winning over even the most traditional residents with her skill and dedication. Why stay? Finn asked one afternoon as she changed his bandages. You could practice anywhere with your training. Tessa's hands paused momentarily. The same reason anyone comes west, I suppose. To build something of my own. To be judged by my work rather than other considerations. Being a woman, you mean? She nodded. Back east, I would always be someone's daughter or someone's wife first, and a doctor second. Here, I'm just Doc Blackwell. Not to everyone, Finn said, thinking of the respectful way Chuck had spoken of her. Not anymore, she conceded with a small smile. But it wasn't easy at first. As the days stretched into weeks, Finn discovered an unexpected rhythm to life in one place. Each morning, Tessa would check his injuries before attending to her other patients. Afternoons, she taught him exercises to maintain his strength and prevent his muscles from atrophying. Evenings often found them sharing simple meals in the small apartment behind her clinic, where conversation flowed more easily than Finn would have thought possible. He learned that Tessa loved poetry but couldn't cook anything more complicated than bacon and beans. She discovered his hidden talent for whittling and his encyclopedic knowledge of horse breeds. They argued good-naturedly about politics, religion, and whether coffee should be boiled with eggshells to settle the grounds. You're healing well, Tessa announced at the end of the second week, examining his leg. Better than I expected, honestly. Finn nodded, surprised by his mixed feelings. The pain had receded to a dull ache, and he could move with crutches for short distances. Soon he would have no excuse to remain. I suppose Chuck will be coming back through to settle the bill, he said. Actually, he's already done so. Tessa looked uncomfortable. He came by yesterday while you were resting, and left without saying goodbye. Finn frowned. It wasn't like the trail boss to avoid a social call. Tessa busied herself with her medical instruments. He said to tell you the outfit's heading to Colorado. Won't be back this way until spring. The implications sank in slowly. So I'm without a job. Only temporarily, she said quickly. Mayor Wilson mentioned the livery stable needs help with their books. Nothing physical until you're healed, but it would keep you in funds. Finn stared at her. You've been arranging employment for me? I've been ensuring my patient has options, she corrected, her chin lifting slightly. What you do with them is your choice. That evening, as Finn sat on the small porch behind the clinic watching the sunset, he considered his situation with uncharacteristic uncertainty. The smart play was to take the livery job, save his money, and move on as soon as possible. Return to the open range where things made sense. Yet something held him back, something beyond his physical injuries. Each day spent in Tessa's company revealed new facets of her character. Her fierce dedication to patients regardless of their ability to pay, her unexpected humor, the quiet strength with which she faced a community still not entirely comfortable with a female physician. Penny for your thoughts, Tessa said, stepping onto the porch with 2 cups of coffee. Finn accepted one gratefully. Just thinking about what comes next. And what have you decided? She settled into the chair beside him, close enough that he could smell the faint lavender scent she wore. That I'm not very good at staying in one place, he admitted. But I'm worse at being in debt. So I'll take the livery job, at least until I can pay you back properly. Tessa studied him over the rim of her cup. Is it really so terrible? Being in one place, I mean. It's not what I'm used to. That's not an answer. Finn sighed, watching as the first stars appeared above the distant mountains. My father had a small farm in Pennsylvania. After my mother died, he just gave up. Stopped working the land, stopped caring about anything. I watched him waste away from grief. He paused, surprised by how easily the long-buried memories surfaced. When he finally passed, I swore I'd never put down roots. Never give anything or anyone that kind of power over me. Tessa was quiet for a long moment. So you chose the cowboy's life. Always moving, never attaching. It's simpler that way. Simpler, perhaps, she said softly. But is it better? Before Finn could answer, a frantic pounding at the clinic door interrupted them. Tessa was on her feet immediately, medical instincts taking over. She returned moments later, her expression grave. There's been an accident at the mine. Multiple injured coming in. I have to go. Let me help, Finn said, reaching for his crutches. She hesitated, then nodded. Extra hands would be welcome, but promise me you won't overexert yourself. For the next several hours, Finn witnessed a side of Tessa he hadn't fully appreciated before. She moved between injured miners with calm efficiency, triaging wounds, giving clear instructions to the makeshift nursing staff, and performing emergency procedures with steady hands. Despite his limited mobility, Finn made himself useful, fetching supplies, keeping records, and offering reassurance to anxious family members gathering outside. Dawn was breaking when the last patient was stabilized. Tessa sank into a chair, exhaustion etched on her face, blood staining her apron. You should rest, Finn said, bringing her water. She shook her head. I need to check on them again in an hour. Then I'll wake you in an hour. When she started to protest, he added, You can't help anyone if you collapse. Document. Something in his tone must have convinced her, for she nodded and allowed him to help her to the small cot she kept for late nights at the clinic. She was asleep almost instantly. Finn watched her for a moment, struck by the contradiction she represented. So capable, yet vulnerable. So strong, yet gentle. For the first time in years, he found himself questioning the walls he'd built around his life. What if the very defenses he'd constructed to prevent pain were actually preventing something else entirely? The mining accident marked a turning point. As autumn settled over Garrison Springs, Finn became an unofficial assistant at the clinic while maintaining his bookkeeping position at the livery. His leg healed steadily, and though he still used a cane, Tessa assured him he would eventually regain full mobility. "You're a natural with patience," she told him one evening as they closed up after a busy day. "Ever consider medicine as a profession?" Finn laughed, surprised by the suggestion. "I can barely write my name legibly. I think doctoring requires a bit more education." "Education can be acquired," she said, organizing her instruments with characteristic precision. "The instinct for caring, that's rarer. Is that what you see in me? Someone who cares?" Tessa met his gaze directly. "I see someone who tries very hard not to. But yes, beneath that, someone who cares deeply." Her words unsettled him, cutting closer to the truth than he was comfortable acknowledging. Over the weeks, their relationship had evolved beyond doctor and patient, yet remained undefined. They shared meals, worked side by side, and engaged in conversations that often lasted late into the night. Yet Finn maintained a careful distance, reminding himself that his stay in Garrison Springs was temporary. As October yielded to November, the town prepared for its annual harvest festival. Despite Finn's reluctance, Tessa convinced him to attend. "You've been here nearly 3 months without experiencing any of the community events," she argued. "Consider it part of your rehabilitation." The festival transformed the town square into a celebration of frontier resilience. Lanterns illuminated tables laden with food, musicians played lively tunes, and children darted between adults in games of tag. Finn felt oddly conspicuous as he accompanied Tessa, aware of curious glances and knowing smiles. "Doc Blackwell." Mayor Wilson approached, beaming. "And Mr. Yates. Glad to see you up and about." "Thank you, Mayor," Tessa replied. "It's a lovely celebration. Wouldn't be the same without you, Document. You've become quite indispensable to our little community." The mayor lowered his voice conspiratorially. "So much so that I've had to discourage several potential suitors. Told them Garrison Springs couldn't afford to lose its doctor to matrimony." Finn felt an unexpected surge of jealousy at the thought of Tessa's suitors, followed by confusion at his own reaction. "I assure you, Mayor, my commitment to medicine leaves little room for other considerations," Tessa said smoothly, though Finn noticed a flush creeping up her neck. As the evening progressed, Tessa was repeatedly called away to greet patients and townspeople. Finn found himself at the edge of the gathering, watching her move through the crowd with grace and warmth. She belonged here, he realized, had created a place for herself through sheer determination and skill. "She's something special, ain't she?" Finn turned to find Chuck standing beside him, the trail boss's weathered face split in a knowing grin. "Chuck, I thought you were in Colorado." "Just got back yesterday." Chuck nodded toward Tessa. "Looks like you found a reason to stay put for once." "Just healing," Finn said defensively. "Another few weeks, and I'll be ready to ride again." Chuck's expression turned serious. "You know, Yates, for a smart man, you can be mighty thick-headed. I've watched you run from anything resembling attachment for 3 years. Now I find you playing nurse to the prettiest doctor west of the Mississippi, and you're still claiming you can't wait to leave." "It's not that simple." "Never is," Chuck agreed. "But answer me this. What exactly are you afraid of?" Before Finn could respond, a commotion near the edge of the square drew their attention. A group of rough-looking men had arrived, clearly already deep in their cups. Their leader, a tall figure with a long scar across one cheek, surveyed the festivities with undisguised contempt. "That's trouble," Chuck murmured. "Delgado's bunch. They ride for the Cross T, been feuding with the local ranchers over water rights." Finn watched as Mayor Wilson hurried over, attempting to welcome the newcomers while subtly encouraging moderation. For a moment, it seemed the situation might defuse peacefully. Then Finn spotted Tessa moving purposefully toward the group. "One of you sent for a doctor?" she asked, medical bag in hand. The scarred man looked her up and down with a sneer. "You're the doctor? Thought you might be the entertainment." Laughter erupted from his companions. Tessa stiffened but held her ground. "If no one needs medical attention, gentlemen, please enjoy the festival responsibly," she said coolly, turning to leave. The man grabbed her arm. "Now don't be unfriendly, Document. We rode a long way." Before Finn fully registered his own movement, he was across the square, cane forgotten. "Take your hand off the lady," he said, voice dangerously quiet. The man turned, surprise giving way to amusement as he took in Finn's still healing frame. "This your protector, Doc? Looks like he could use some doctoring himself." "Mr. Delgado," Mayor Wilson intervened, This is a peaceful gathering. Dr. Blackwell is highly respected here. A lady doctor. Delgado cut him off, still gripping Tessa's arm. What next? Female sheriffs? Indian school teachers? The last warning, Finn said evenly. Let her go. Something in his tone must have registered, for Delgado released Tessa, though his mocking smile remained. The crippled cowboy has some fire. What you planning to do, boy? You can barely stand. What happened next occurred so quickly that witnesses later disagreed on the sequence. Delgado lunged forward. Finn sidestepped with unexpected agility, and suddenly the larger man was sprawled in the dirt, blood streaming from his nose. Silence fell over the festival. Delgado's men reached for their weapons, but Chuck and several townsmen moved to block them, hands hovering near their own guns. You're dead, Delgado spat, struggling to his feet. You hear me? Dead man walking. Sheriff Mills finally pushed through the crowd. That's enough. Delgado, you and your boys clear out. Now. For a tense moment, violence seemed inevitable. Then Delgado wiped blood from his face and backed away. This isn't finished, he promised, eyes fixed on Finn. As the Cross T riders departed, the festival atmosphere had irrevocably changed. Families began gathering their children, and the music died away. Finn felt Tessa's hand on his arm. We should go, she said quietly. You're shaking. It wasn't until they had returned to the clinic that Finn realized she was right. The adrenaline of confrontation had masked the pain of standing without support, and now his leg throbbed mercilessly. Sit, Tessa ordered, professional demeanor firmly in place. She examined him efficiently, confirming he hadn't re-injured himself, then handed him a glass of whiskey. For medicinal purposes. Finn took a careful sip, watching as she paced the small room. I'm sorry about the festival. Sorry. She stopped abruptly. Finn Yates, that man was about to. She broke off, visibly composing herself. You have nothing to apologize for. Delgado's not going to let this go, he said soberly. Men like that can't afford to lose face. Sheriff Mills will handle it. Maybe. Finn wasn't convinced. But I've made you a target. That's the last thing I wanted. Tessa sat beside him, suddenly looking exhausted. I've been a target since the day I arrived. A woman practicing medicine challenges everything men like Delgado believe about the natural order. It's different now, Finn insisted. This is personal. Because you defended me? She studied him, something unreadable in her expression. Why did you, Finn? You've spent months telling me how eager you are to leave, how attachments are dangerous. Yet tonight you risked everything to protect me. The question hung between them, demanding an honesty Finn had been avoiding for weeks. I couldn't stand by and watch him hurt you. Why not? Because you matter to me, he admitted, the words feeling like surrender. More than I wanted you to. More than I thought anyone could. Tessa's eyes softened. And that frightens you. Terrifies me, he corrected with a rueful smile. Everything I've avoided for years, staying in one place, caring about someone, being vulnerable, it's all happened anyway. She reached out, tentatively touching his face. Is it really so terrible? Caring. I'm beginning to think it might be worth the risk, Finn said quietly, covering her hand with his own. The moment stretched between them, full of unspoken possibility. Then Tessa leaned forward and gently pressed her lips to his. The kiss was brief, almost questioning, but it shattered the last of Finn's resistance. When they separated, her eyes were bright with emotion. I've wanted to do that for weeks. Finn smiled, feeling strangely unburdened. If I'd known, I might have found the courage to stay sooner. The sound of approaching horses interrupted their conversation. Tessa moved to the window, her expression changing to alarm. Riders. At least 5 of them. Finn was on his feet instantly, grabbing his cane. Get your medical bag and whatever valuables you can't replace. Quickly. You think it's Delgado? She was already moving, gathering essential supplies with practiced efficiency. I'm not waiting to find out. Finn checked the revolver he kept in his belt, relieved to find it loaded. Is there a back way out? Tessa nodded, slinging her medical bag over one shoulder. Through the storage room. It leads to the alley. They had just reached the rear door when the front of the clinic exploded with the sound of breaking glass. Angry voices called Finn's name, followed by the crash of overturning furniture. Go, Finn whispered, pushing Tessa toward the dark alley. Get to the sheriff's office. Not without you, she insisted, gripping his arm. I'll be right behind you, he promised, knowing his injured leg would slow them both. The hesitation cost them their chance. The storage room door burst open, revealing Delgado and two of his men, guns drawn. Well, Delgado drawled, satisfaction evident in his scarred face. The doctor and her pet cripple, trying to escape. Finn stepped in front of Tessa, mind racing. This is between you and me, Delgado. Let her go. Gallant to the end, Delgado mocked. But I think the lady doctor needs to learn what happens when she lets her guard down around the wrong sort. He gestured to his men. Burn it. All of it. Finn lunged forward despite his bad leg, but was quickly subdued by the stronger men. They dragged him and Tessa outside, where the remaining riders were already splashing coal oil against the wooden clinic walls. 3 years of my life, Tessa whispered, watching in horror as flames began to lick at the structure. Everything I've built. Lesson in frontier justice, Doc, Delgado said, grabbing her chin roughly. No one makes a fool of me and walks away. The town will hunt you down for this, Finn warned, struggling against the men restraining him. By the time anyone notices, we'll be long gone. Delgado nodded to his men. Bring them. We'll finish this somewhere more private. They were forced onto horses, Finn's protests silenced by a brutal blow to the ribs. As they rode away from Garrison Springs, the night sky behind them glowed orange with the burning clinic. Tessa's face was tear-streaked but determined, her eyes meeting Finn's with a silent message of courage. The riders took them deep into the surrounding hills, following game trails invisible in the darkness. Finally, they reached a small clearing where Delgado ordered a halt. Get them down, he commanded. Tie them to that tree. Rough hands dragged Finn and Tessa from their horses, binding them back to back against a gnarled oak. Finn tested the ropes, finding them expertly tied. Escape seemed impossible. What now, Delgado? He asked, playing for time. Murder a doctor and an injured cowboy? Even out here, that'll bring the law down on you. Delgado laughed, the sound echoing unnaturally in the quiet night. Who said anything about murder? I'm just going to leave you both tied up in cougar country. Whatever happens after that is nature taking its course. Terror gripped Finn at the implications. A slow death by exposure or predators was a fate worse than a bullet. You're making a mistake, Tessa said suddenly, her voice steadier than Finn would have believed possible. I treated your foreman's son last spring. Diphtheria, remember? He's alive because of me. Something flickered across Delgado's face. Doubt, perhaps, or an unwelcome memory. Then his expression hardened again. Should have thought of that before you took up with this saddle tramp. He's worth 10 of you. Tessa shot back. A real man doesn't need to terrorize women to feel powerful. Delgado's hand flew, striking Tessa across the face with enough force to snap her head back against the tree. Finn roared with helpless rage, straining against his bonds until blood slicked his wrists. You're going to die slow for that, he promised Delgado. I'll find you if it's the last thing I do. Big words from a man about to be coyote food. Delgado mounted his horse, gesturing for his men to follow. Enjoy your last night together. They say dying from thirst takes about 3 days. Of course, the mountain lions might find you before that. With cruel laughter, the riders departed, leaving Finn and Tessa alone in the wilderness. For several minutes, neither spoke, listening to the receding hoofbeats until silence claimed the night once more. Are you hurt? Finn asked finally, trying to turn his head enough to see her. Just bruised, Tessa replied, her voice small but composed. What about you? I've been better. His ribs throbbed where he'd been struck, and his legs screamed from the unaccustomed exertion. Can you reach the knots? No, they're too tight. She shifted slightly against him. Finn, I'm sorry about your leg. You were almost healed. The absurdity of her concern in their dire situation nearly made him laugh. Right now, my leg is the least of our worries. Someone will notice the fire, she reasoned. The town will organize a search. Maybe, Finn agreed, not wanting to extinguish her hope. But they both knew the truth. Delgado had taken them miles from Garrison Springs, into territory rarely traversed. By the time any search party reached them, it would likely be too late. As the night deepened, temperature dropping with the high desert air, Finn felt Tessa shivering against him. Try to stay warm, he urged. Talk to me. Tell me about Philadelphia. She began hesitantly, describing the tree-lined streets and brick buildings of her childhood home. Gradually, her stories became more personal. Her father's encouragement of her medical ambitions, her mother's early death, her determination to prove herself in a profession dominated by men. Your father sounds like a remarkable man, Finn said when she paused. He would be proud of what you've built here. What I've lost, you mean? Her voice caught. The clinic, my instruments, my medical texts, all gone. Buildings can be rebuilt, Finn insisted. Your knowledge, your skill, that's what makes you a doctor. No one can take that from you. She was quiet for a long moment. I keep thinking about all the people who depend on me. Mrs. Peterson's baby is due next month. The Jenkins boy needs his bandages changed daily. Who will care for them now? The selflessness of her concerns moved Finn deeply. Even facing death, her thoughts were for her patients. You'll care for them, he said firmly. Because we're going to survive this. How can you be so certain? Because I've finally found something worth living for, Finn admitted. Someone worth changing for. And I refuse to lose that chance before it's properly begun. The night stretched endlessly, punctuated by distant animal calls and the rustling of wind through pine needles. They talked intermittently, conserving strength but keeping each other alert. By dawn, both were suffering from thirst and the cramping pain of hours immobilized. Listen, Tessa whispered suddenly as the first light touched the eastern horizon. Do you hear that? Finn strained his ears, initially detecting nothing beyond the normal sounds of wilderness awakening. Then he caught it, the faint but distinctive creak of saddle leather. Someone's coming, he confirmed, hope and fear warring within him. If Delgado had returned to finish them after all. A horse and rider appeared at the edge of the clearing. For one heart-stopping moment, Finn thought it was indeed Delgado. Then recognition dawned. Chuck, he called, his parched voice barely carrying. The trail boss dismounted quickly, hurrying toward them with a hunting knife already drawn. Knew that no-good skunk was up to something, he muttered, sawing through their bonds. Half the town's out looking for you too. As circulation painfully returned to their limbs, Chuck helped them drink from his canteen. The clinic? Tessa asked, dreading the answer. Gone, Chuck confirmed grimly. But the fire was spotted early enough to keep it from spreading to other buildings. How did you find us? Finn asked, massaging his wrists where the ropes had cut deep. Chuck's weathered face split in a grim smile. Wasn't hard. One of Delgado's boys got liquored up at the saloon after, bragging about teaching you both a lesson. Sheriffs formed a posse. They're tracking Delgado's gang as we speak. With Chuck's help, they mounted his horse, Tessa in the saddle while Finn and Chuck walked alongside. Progress was slow, hampered by Finn's re-injured leg and their weakened condition, but by mid-morning, they encountered the search party from Garrison Springs. The return to town was a blur of concerned faces and gentle hands. Dr. Peterson, a retired physician who'd settled in the area, examined them both, declaring them dehydrated and battered but fundamentally sound. They were given a room at the hotel, the owner insisting it was the least the town could do for their doctor. The sheriff's men caught up with Delgado at the territorial border. Mayor Wilson reported that evening, visiting them with news and a basket of food from the townswomen. He'll stand trial for arson and attempted murder. Won't see daylight for 20 years, if ever. And my clinic? Tessa asked, the question that had been haunting her since their rescue. The mayor smiled broadly. That's actually what I came to discuss. The town council met this afternoon. We voted unanimously to rebuild, bigger and better than before. A proper clinic with a small hospital attached. Tessa's eyes filled with tears. I don't know what to say. Say you'll stay, the mayor urged. Garrison Springs needs its doctor. After he left, Finn and Tessa sat together on the small balcony overlooking the main street. Lanterns glowed in windows as darkness settled over the town, bringing with it a sense of peace neither had expected to feel again. Will you stay? Finn asked quietly. Accept their offer? Tessa turned to him, her amber eyes searching his face. That depends. On what? On whether I'll be rebuilding alone, she said simply. Finn took her hand, marveling at how natural it felt. When I came west, I was running from loss, from the pain of caring too much. I thought if I kept moving, never put down roots, I could avoid that vulnerability. He paused, gathering thoughts he'd never expected to voice. But these past months with you have taught me something. The very connections I feared are what give life meaning. Even if they come with risk, she asked softly. Especially then. He smiled, tracing the line of her cheek. I love you, Tessa Blackwell. And if you'll have a former drifter with a slightly damaged leg, I'd like to build something permanent. With you. Her answer came not in words, but in the kiss that followed. Tender yet passionate, filled with promise and healing. 1 year later, the new clinic stood proudly on Garrison Springs Main Street, its whitewashed walls and green shutters a testament to the town's appreciation for its doctor. Behind it, connected by a covered walkway, stood a comfortable house where Dr. Tessa Yates and her husband Finn made their home. The late afternoon sun streamed through the windows as Tessa finished treating her last patient of the day, a young cowhand with a broken finger. Keep it splinted for 3 weeks, she instructed, securing the bandage. And no rope work until I say so. Yes, ma'am, the young man promised, casting an anxious glance toward the door where Finn stood, account books in hand. After the cowhand departed, Tessa smiled at her husband. You didn't need to intimidate him. I didn't say a word, Finn protested, moving to help her organize her instruments. You didn't have to. That protective glare of yours works wonders on young cowboys with wandering eyes. Finn laughed, pulling her into his arms. Can I help it if my wife is the prettiest doctor in the territory? The only doctor for 50 miles, she corrected, but leaned into his embrace. Together they walked through the clinic, checking that everything was in order before closing for the evening. The new facility had exceeded everyone's expectations, with separate treatment rooms, a small surgical theater, and even a proper dispensary. What pleased Tessa most, however, was the small sign hanging beside the main entrance, Dr. T. Blackwell Yates, physician and surgeon, assisted by F. Yates, medical apprentice. For after their ordeal with Delgado, Finn had made a surprising decision. With Tessa's encouragement and Chuck's financial backing, he'd applied to medical school back east. While awaiting acceptance, he studied under Tessa's guidance, discovering an aptitude for medical work that surprised everyone except her. Letter came today, Finn mentioned casually as they entered their home. From Jefferson Medical College. Tessa froze, hope and anxiety mingling on her face. And Finn's serious expression dissolved into a grin. I've been accepted. Starting next fall. Finn. She threw her arms around his neck. That's wonderful. I knew you could do it. It means leaving Garrison Springs for a few years, he reminded her. Are you sure you're ready for that? Dr. Peterson has already agreed to come out of retirement while we're gone, she said, eyes sparkling with plans long discussed. And just think, when we return, Garrison Springs will have 2 doctors, husband and wife, working side by side. Finn marveled at how completely his life had transformed. From a solitary drifter convinced that attachment meant vulnerability, he had discovered that true strength came from connection, from building something lasting with someone you loved. I never thought I could be this happy, he confessed, drawing her close. Never imagined having a home, a purpose beyond the next cattle drive. And I never imagined finding someone who would see me as both a woman and a doctor, Tessa replied softly, who would respect my work while loving me for myself. As the sun set over the western mountains, painting the sky in hues of gold and crimson, Finn Yates held his wife close and gave thanks for the fall that had brought him to her clinic, and for the woman who had healed more than just his broken leg. She had mended his heart, showing him that even on the harsh frontier, love could flourish, bringing with it a strength greater than any he had known in his solitary wanderings. In Tessa's arms, he had found not weakness, but a power to face whatever the future might bring, together.